Mulan is a trans man, and I'm gonna prove it. Before we get started, I want to clarify up front. Mulan is fictional according to the majority of scholars, so therefore I am going to assume Mulan is fictional. Also, as a trans woman, I don't know what it's like to be a trans man, so I've invited a very special guest, Alexander from Arrive Therapy. Welcome back.
Hey, my name is Alexander. I am a licensed professional counselor, a trans man, and the owner of Arrive Therapy, which you can find at arrivetherapy.com. We are an all LGBTQ counseling practice. We do gender counseling, mental health counseling, family counseling, all kinds of stuff.
So to start off, Alexander, what are some common misconceptions about being trans masked?
Two things. One is that once you transition to being a man and people perceive you as being a man, everything is great and everything is perfect. I mean, the truth is that if you've got mental health issues, relationship issues, some of those things might get better if you're feeling better about yourself, but some of those things you're still going to have to work through. Also that everything about being a man is great. I find that, objectively, there are some things I think that are better about being a woman in the world and some things that are better about being a man in the world. There are things that I don't like about being a man in the world, even though it's more comfortable for me.
Mulan is expected to uphold honor in her family, and in this case, honor involves being the perfect bride. Classic misogyny, am I right? Women serve no purpose than to being there with a man. The dynamics of gender are very clearly laid down here. Boys are expected to go to war, and girls are supposed to have a boy going to war for them.
Too skinny. Not good for bearing sons.
In this society, the only purpose of women is to have children, which is not too far off from what conservatives want. That's not even exaggeration, that's literally what they want.
People haven't really done their work. They haven't really thought about their gender or their sexuality. They just go through the world kind of very myopically, and they're not really thinking about the world with the broad spectrum of how people feel comfortable living and people's sexuality.
So I'm not going to talk about this from a perspective of Chinese culture, because I'm not knowledgeable of it, even from a historical perspective. But I'm just saying that this is misogyny, plain and simple. And this is something that persists throughout the world. And these ideas about gender are even hyper-exaggerated among queer people because, well, we break gender roles all the time. In this society, women aren't allowed to talk over men because it's rude.
My father has already fought for
Silence! You would do well to teach your daughter to hold her tongue in a man's presence.
This is sexism. They're training brides to be dignified, refined, poised, and silent. Who are they training these brides for? Steven Crowder? If you don't fit the gender expectations, then you are setting your family up for shame. This is something queer people, and especially trans people, deal with constantly because there's so much homophobia, transphobia, and sexism in this society.
You have this bias towards women, that women are not as capable, women are not as smart, women should stay in their place, take on women, a little bit of a judgmental take on women. And a lot of people aren't even aware that they're feeling that way, that they have those mindsets. So I think that's another benefit of being trans, is a lot of times we've kind of done the work to really think through gender and think through our stereotypes and our biases and that kind of stuff.
Nowhere is it more clear that Mulan is trans by analyzing the lyrics to the song Reflection. Now, due to copyright issues, I can't just play the song for you because companies are really picky about that. I tried to avoid AI when possible. I tried to reach out to a few trans singers, but they didn't get back to me. So this is what we got.
Look at me. I will never pass for a perfect bride or a perfect daughter.
Now, the word passing has many meanings. In the trans community, passing typically refers to how well do you physically pass. Do you look like your authentic gender? The stereotypically, of course, because there is no one way a certain gender looks. But there is also the other extreme of it, where your internal sense of self does not reflect your outward experience, and therefore you do not pass. You try to be this version of yourself, but it's not you, so you can't do it. I know for me, that was definitely the reality here, that I was constantly trying to pretend to be male. And well, I did pretty terribly at it.
Can it be I'm not meant to play this part?
I'm not meant to play this part very clearly speaks to that.
I mean, I really struggled. I had a career, I had a family. I just didn't like myself.
Now I see that if I were truly to be myself, I would break my family's heart.
This is a common experience of many trans people. We fear that we're going to break our family's heart. And in some cases, we do. And it's finding that balance and the right time to be our authentic self. Because really, it is torturous to not be ourselves.
Who is that girl I see staring straight back at me? Why is my reflection someone I don't know?
Looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, who is that? I felt really disconnected to myself.
Definitely relate to the idea of looking in the mirror and seeing someone I don't recognize. Just in this case, it was a boy.
Somehow I cannot hide who I am, though I've tried. When will my reflection show who I am inside?
I didn't ever want to leave the house. I struggled with, just wanting to unalive myself, and I didn't know why. I just didn't feel good. And once I started transitioning, again, like some things in my life didn't automatically change, but a lot of things changed because I felt better. I felt better in my own skin, and I was a lot happier. So then, your life gets better when you're...
Yes, and at a certain point, we just can't hide it. And the Emperor decides that one man from each family must go serve to fight in this war, which means Mulan's father must serve even though he's elderly. But this rule doesn't make much sense if you really think about it, even if you buy the idea that men are inherently stronger and all this, which I don't inherently buy. I think it's a bell curve with a lot of overlap. But even if that were true, this plan does not make sense. Why would you draft an elderly man because he's the oldest in the family, when a different family might have two sons who are perfectly capable of fighting? So Mulan decides to go fight in their father's place, to go fight in battle, dressed as a man, of course. Now, there are many stories like this in history. Women dressing up as men to go fight in wars. However, not all these cases are cis women dressing up as men. Some of them are trans men. And it can be complicated to make a distinction here. Sometimes they decide to stay men after the war. And sometimes they have to go back because it's what society expects of them. We can never really know. And that's one of the tricky things about analyzing history. What we use to describe ourselves nowadays isn't how people described themselves then. Yes, there are very clear examples of trans people in history, especially out in the Old West. This is well established. Trans people are not new. We have been a part of this history for a long time, so it's important to remember that. However, we don't even have to assume that much about Mulan, because one of the ancestors says,
"Your great-granddaughter had to be a cross-dresser!"
Now, does this mean Mulan is a crossdresser? Debatably. Trans people can be crossdressers and so can cis people. But what are they referring to here? Would the ancestors have an idea of what being trans is? Probably not. But this shows that there's been a history of wearing men's clothing before. This is not new. So, given Mulan's prior feelings about gender and their placement in society, it's perfectly reasonable to assume that Mulan is trans to some degree, if not a trans man. And one thing that this film does show is that men are not a monolith.
Don't buy into, oh, you have to be masculine in a certain way. Men have to be this way. I have to act this way. I have to perform masculinity. Because what I really think is that if you go from one box that doesn't work for you, being female or being perceived as female, and then you really try to shove yourself into this hyper masculine role that may or may not fit you, if it doesn't feel like a fit, then you're not going to feel good. So, the whole point of transitioning is to feel better, to live more authentically. And so just find your way. There's lots of men who are not hyper masculine cis men. So just kind of look out there at the range of, ways that masculinity shows up, and really make sure you carve out your own path and don't just put yourself in another box.
Yes, there are stereotypes about what a man is, but men are very different. There's a lot of variation in what makes a man and a woman a woman. There's so much range there. What do you think, Alexander?
You know, I feel pretty masculine. Again, I don't feel like a cis man. I feel like a trans man. But I would say that I feel pretty masculine and I feel comfortable around other masculine people. I feel like there's a lot of beautiful things about masculinity. But now on the other side, now that I have transitioned, I can see there's a lot of really beautiful things about being a woman and femininity, which I couldn't see before.
There is no one way to be a man, no one way to be masculine. There is a whole spectrum there, and it's a beautiful spectrum. There is also no one way to be a woman, no one way to be feminine, and there is no one way to be non-binary or androgynous, or all this beautiful spectrum of people. While the film does not end with a transition, because this film was made in the 90s, it could also be inferred that Mulan isn't transitioning because of society's expectations. But that doesn't mean there isn't benefits to transitioning. For me, transitioning has radically improved my life. I'm significantly happier.
In every way possible, it has benefited my life. I'm so much happier. I feel like my career really blossomed. My career as a counselor really blossomed. I feel like I have much more like a life purpose and meaning. I feel comfortable in my body. I mean, it's like everybody, I'm not comfortable. I'm not happy with every single thing about my body, but I just feel like a level of comfort in my own self. I feel much more connected to myself. I feel much more connected to people, much more outgoing. So for me, it's been really beautiful. It's been a really great journey.
And I really want this video to be a celebration of trans identity, and specifically trans masc identity. But I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments, what has transitioning been like for you? What has your journey been like? Does this film speak to you in any sort of way? I want to hear from people of different gender identities, and I especially want to hear from trans people of color. Your experience is very important and often not heard as much. So I really want to get your perspective on this. And a special thank you again to Alexander. If you're looking for a therapist that has an understanding of being trans, go to Arrive Therapy. They got great services there. I'm not sponsored by them, but I think it's a really cool service, and I think if you're looking for a therapist, they might be a good place to start out. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see an extended version of it, you can sign up for my Patreon. And thank you to my patrons, YouTube channel members, and TikTok subscribers for helping make this video possible. I greatly appreciate your support. But if you can't do that, at least give this video a like, comment, and subscribe. It boosts this channel along and I greatly appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this video, I highly recommend you watch my video on Beauty and the Beast. It's one of my underrated videos and I think you might enjoy it.